Hi, this is Mrs. Clark, and welcome to Practice 1, Solving Multi-Step Equations Using Shapes. So as you see, I've kind of structured out how this problem is supposed to work for you, but I have kind of left blanks for you to fill in as you solve the problem. So it's going to be important that you pay attention to what the shape is, because anytime you see the same shape, it should be the same number. And if you look in the problem, I've started off some of the problems with you by defining what a specific shape equals. So we're going to work through these together. We're going to do two at a time. So the first two, we're going to practice combining like terms. So if you notice, on the equation, we have an 8 in a triangle, and that has an r next to it, and then we have a 5 in a square, and that has an r next to it as well. So the first thing we need to do is combine our like terms. And because both of those shapes have an r after them, they are like terms. Any terms with the same variable are like terms. So over here on the side, I gave a place for us to fill in our numbers. So 8 we know is triangle, and 5 we know is square. So I'm going to do 8 plus 5. Type that into your calculator if you need to, and you're going to get 13. So our answer is going to be 13r. 8r plus 5r equals 13r. So I'm going to go over to my equation, and I'm going to fill in a 13 in front of that r. Then the next thing we have to do is solve for r. So in order to do that, we have to get rid of the 13 that's in front of the r. So we do that by dividing. So you'll see I've drawn a division sign underneath. We're going to divide by 13 because that's what's in front of r. We're going to do that on both sides to keep it balanced. If you notice, there is a little line through, let me show you, a little line going through the 13s like that. That means that those two things cancel each other out. So dividing by 13 got rid of that other 13. So I'm left with just r on that side. So you see here we have just an r. But if I go to the other side, I have to figure out what 13 divided by 13 is. So I can type that into my calculator, 13 divided by 13, or I can remember that any number divided by itself is 1. So 13 divided by 13 is 1, so that means r is 1. So that's my final answer, r equals 1. So now we're going to do number 2, which is a very similar problem, but it's going to give us more to do once we're finished combining. So we have a few more steps to do after we combine the like terms. Anytime you feel like you know what you're doing, feel free to pause it and try it on your own, and then check back to see if you did it correctly. So for number 2, again, I have 8 in a triangle, so I'm going to fill that in over here. And I'm going to combine that with 7. Notice both of these this time are just plain numbers. They don't have variables next to them. So 8 plus 7 I know is 15. So I'm going to fill that in my square. So now my square becomes 15. So negative 13 plus negative 4x plus 15 is now my equation that I'm trying to solve. In order to solve this, I have to get the x by itself. So the first thing that I want to do is to get rid of that number, 15, that's on the same side as the x. So if you'll notice, underneath it, I wrote minus square. Well, we already know that 15 is a square. It's a positive 15, so I'm going to do minus 15, which is going to cancel that out. And I've noticed I've also put a line through it to show that it cancels out. So I'm going to do minus 15 on the right side. I have to do the same thing on the left side. I want to focus on the numbers that are near the x because I want to get rid of them so that x can be by itself. So now I have negative 13 and a minus 15 in a square underneath it. So in my calculator, I'm going to type in negative 13 minus 15. When I do that, I'm going to get negative 28. So now my hexagon becomes negative 28. Now you'll notice underneath the negative 28 is a different shape. So I'm going to have to decide what am I dividing by on both sides. So I'm going to look at the side with the x on it, and I'm going to see that in front of the x, I have negative 4. So I want to get the x alone. So the way I do that is to divide by that negative 4. So my heart is going to be negative 4. I'm going to divide by negative 4 on both sides to keep it balanced. So negative 28 divided by negative 4. I'm going to type that into my calculator. Negative 28 divided by negative 4, and negative divided by a negative becomes a positive, and I get positive 7. So diamond is 7, and x equals 7, so I'm done. This negative 4 and this positive 4 are going to cancel each other out, so I didn't draw a line through them, but you can feel free to do that on your paper. Okay, so those two examples were how do we combine like terms. Now we're going to look at the next type of multi-step equation where I have to do distributive property. So at the bottom here we have the distributive property. First thing we need to do is distribute the number in front of the parentheses. So you'll notice in the first example I have a -2 out here in front of the parentheses. So that is going to get distributed, and distribution or distributing just means to multiply. So you'll notice underneath I have to do -2 times 8n, and then I also have to do -2 times -4. So when I'm looking at this, I'm just going to use my calculator to help me do that multiplication. So the first one, -2 times 8n, is going to be something n. So I just need to do the numbers, -2 times 8. And feel free to use your calculator when you're calculating these. Type them in with me. -2 times 8 gives me -16. So now my circle is going to be a -16. So I have -16n plus, now I got to do the other part of my distributing. -2 times -4, excuse me. So negative times a negative is a positive, that's why it's a plus triangle underneath. And 2 times 4 gives me 8, so its triangle becomes 8. So it's -16n plus 8 equals 120. So now I need to get the n by itself. So I need to get rid of that 8 that's kind of hanging around in that triangle. It's a positive 8, so look underneath, I'm going to subtract, but I'm going to subtract the same number. I'm going to subtract 8 so that they cancel out. I'm going to have to do that on the right side of my equation also to keep it balanced. So let's bring down what we have. We have a -16 in our circle, -16n. 8 and -8 cancel out, so I don't have to write them. But then I have to do 120 minus 8. So I'm going to type that in my calculator. 120 minus 8 equals, and I've got 112. Now I have to get the n alone, sorry, and there's a -16 in front of it. So I'm going to divide by -16 on both sides of the equation to keep it balanced. -16 divided by -16 is going to cancel out and be 1n. 12 divided by -16, I'm going to do that in my calculator. 112 divided by -16 is -7. So my hexagon becomes a -7. N equals -7. If you feel like you understand it and you can follow the steps that I've kind of guided and laid out for you, go ahead and pause it now and try to do number 4 on your own. You can always check back when you get stuck. So pause it now and try number 4. Okay, we're back. Let's go over number 4. We're going to do 8 distributed through to -8r and to +1. Oh, and I actually have a mistake here on this, so fix this on your paper. This should say 1. Actually, I'll fix it on your paper, but the first thing I'm going to do is 8 times -8r. So 8 times -8 in my calculator is -64. So my circle becomes -64. And then I have to do 8 times 1, which is 8. So my triangle becomes 8, equals -312. So the next thing I have to do is get the r alone, but I have this plus 8 in the triangle. I need to get rid of it, so I'm going to do -8 in the triangle on both sides of my equation. I'm going to bring down that -64 that goes in that circle, -64r. 8s are going to cancel out, and then I have to do -312 minus 8. And so I'm going to get -320. Then I need to get the r alone, but I have this -64 in front of it, so I'm going to divide by -64 on both sides to keep it balanced. And the -64s are going to cancel out and have just r. And then on my right side, I'm going to do -320 divided by -64, and I'm going to get 5. So r equals 5. I think you're getting it. We're doing good. We're going to now do the last two that are on the next page together. If you feel like you know it, I would really strongly urge you to pause and try it on your own. I'll get you started, and then maybe you can pause it and then check back. All right. First one. Number 5. 4n plus 8 equals 6 plus 3n. Notice on this one, we have n's on the left and we have n's on the right. So the first thing we want to do when we have n's on both sides is bring all of the n's to the same side. So we're going to bring all our variables, all our x's, whatever variable we're using, all to one side. So the way we're going to do that is using inverse operations. So I have a 4n on one side and a 3n on the other side. I almost always move the smaller one. So in this case, the smaller one is the 3n. So you'll notice underneath it has a minus square n. So since I'm trying to get rid of the 3n, I want to move it to the other side, and I want to do that using inverses, I'm going to have to subtract 3n in order to make that happen. Minus 3n minus 3n. And then you'll notice I did cross off the 3n and what's below it, so that tells you that's the one that I want to move. So now I'm going to do my math. 4n minus 3n is going to give me 1n. Plus 8 equals 6, because the 3n and the negative 3n canceled out. Now I've got to get the n by itself. I have this plus 8 on it I want to get rid of, so I'm going to minus 8 on both sides. So my heart becomes 8. Then I'm going to bring down my 1n. My 8s are going to cancel out. And I'm going to have 6 minus 8. So I'm going to type that in my calculator. And I've got negative 2. So diamond becomes negative 2. I've got 1n equals negative 2. I've got a 1 in front of n, so I'm going to divide both sides by 1. Those 1s are going to cancel out. I have just n. Negative 2 divided by 1 is still negative 2, because when I divide something by 1, it doesn't change it. So you'll notice my answer was still a diamond, meaning it was the same number as this number. So that dividing by 1 didn't really change our number, but we did keep in that same process that we've been doing. Okay? Try to do number 6 on your own. Pause it for real now. Get started, and then press play to see if you did it right. And then if you did it right, press pause again and keep going. You can try to do this one on your own. I know you can do it. All right, press pause. Okay, hopefully you tried this one on your own, but now we're going to go through it just to make sure we've got it correct. So we're going to try to bring all our variables to one side. I noticed I have a 2x on the left and a negative 6x on the right. I like to move the smallest one, so in this case that means the negative one. And you'll notice there's a line going through the negative 6x and the triangle below it, so that tells us those are the ones that should be inverse operations. So I should be trying to add 6x on both sides of the equation, so that those negative 6 and the positive 6 cancel out, and I'll get all my x's on the left side. So I have to do 2x plus 6x, and I get 8x, so I'm going to fill in that heart with an 8. 8x minus 3, the x's on the right side cancel out, so equals 5. Now I've got 8x minus 3. I got to get rid of that minus 3, so underneath it I see a plus. I'm going to add 3, so that it will go away using my inverse operations. I've got, those are canceled. I've got 8x equals 5 plus 3, which is 8. So notice there's a heart on both sides because both of them are 8. Now I've got 8x. I'm trying to get the x alone, so I want to divide by 8 so that these will cancel out. And I want to divide by 8 on the other side. And these are also going to cancel out, but in this case, 8 divided by 8 isn't 0. 8 divided by 8 is 1, so x equals 1 is our solution. So hopefully you were able to do at least one of these on your own. If not, it's totally okay, as long as you were listening and focused on what you were doing. Feel free to watch this again if you think it helps. And now you can go look for practice 2 and try some more on your own. Good luck. Thanks for watching.